Yo people, what's good? It's your boy Remi here from the X's and O's team. I'm here with a very special guest today. GBDB coordinator, Kent Exiles, DC coordinator, and ex-Olympians head coach, Neo Edwards. How you doing today, my guy?
How you doing, my friend? How you going?
All good, man. How you keeping in these times?
Oh, just trying to keep safe, stay healthy, occupy my time. It's unfortunate that football's been kind of suspended in the way it has, but it's given some opportunities to kind of focus on some other things. Family, something that a lot of the time gets pushed to one side a little. So it's been not so bad. I've been able to spend a lot more time with family and work on a few things. So it hasn't been too bad.
You tell us, coach, how did you get into American football?
Okay. Oh wow. I would say I would describe the generations of American football starting from in Great Britain in the early 80s. Right. I joined American football in the late 80s, probably branching into the second generation of American football. I'm originally from North London, so my first team, guys would probably be surprised to hear, was the Finsbury Park Stallions. Wow. Right? We were the original team to play at Finsbury Park. And
so what, it wasn't London Blitz back then, no?
It didn't exist.
Wow. Okay.
Finsbury Park Stallions. We were a new team. Right, what happened, just to give guys some insight, the London Ravens and Streatham Olympians were kind of the team of, I'd say, South and West London. Right. The London Capitals were the team, because the league was split into two. There was two leagues running concurrently with each other.
So this wasn't BAFA?
No, this is before BAFA. I believe it was, the leagues changed names over time. So it's two separate leagues, right? So one team couldn't play a team from another league. So let's just say the London Olympians was the number one team when they eventually took over from the Ravens, and the London Capitals were the number one team in that league, and everyone used to talk about who would win if the Capitals played the Olympians, but they never could, right? And what happened? We was Finsbury Park Stallions. The London Capitals, the number one team at the time, they didn't have a junior team, so they took us on, and we became the London Capital Juniors, and that's how I basically began my football career.
Oh, okay, so one sunny day in Finsbury, you walked past Finsbury Park and you thought, yeah.
Well, I could tell you exactly what happened. There was I believe I was about 16. Yep. And this guy was telling me about American football. You've got I don't know, guys have talked about this in the past. The atmosphere of American football at the time, right? The atmosphere was it was a new game, right? Mm-hmm. Players were getting into it, but it was a particular type of player, right? So, or say a particular type of person that was getting into football, like a lot of kind of tough, kind of street guys, and as well as athletes, guys that wanted to challenge themselves, right? So I had this friend, guy, he was one of those guys that was kind of good at doing everything. And his name was Ruffian Paul. Right, that gives you a bit of an example. And he said, there's this game, man, you got to come down and check it out. And we went down there, and I was hooked. From the first session, I was hooked, and yeah, that was my game from then onwards.
Oh, that's lit, man, and we'll touch back on a bit more about that in a bit. How long did you play? And during the time you played, what teams have you played on?
Okay, so let me break it down. So we could be here for a while. So let me just touch on in the UK, because I was fortunate enough to play at home and abroad. So in the UK, I played for a few different teams, but I would say after my junior period, right, and becoming senior, I played with the London Rockets and then went on to the London Olympians, and I'd pretty much say that was the entirety of my kind of senior football playing before I moved on to Europe. When I went on to Europe, I played in the GFL 1. I played for a couple of teams in GFL 1, most notably the Stuttgart Scorpions. I also played for Italian team for Ancona Dolphins. And that was before then returning back to the UK, and this is a bit of a kind of a controversial thing that happened, because at the time when I need to kind of get this story out, sorry. When I came back to the UK, right, the London Olympians were still the reigning champions. So whilst I'd won about 6 championships with them before going off to, I was fortunate enough to become part of the NFL Europe Player Program. It's similar to the kind of the national pathway program that we have now. And then moving into semi-pro in Germany and Italy. When I came back, kind of nothing, for me, I felt like nothing had changed. The Olympians were still the #1 team, and all my friends and everyone, my coaches that I kind of learned football through were still there, but I felt I couldn't join back with the team, because I love football, and I just felt I need to do something to change the dynamic of how it was, in this country. So I decided I'm going to find a team, and I, much to all my friends and coaches' dismay and disapproval, I said I'm going to find a team, and I'm going to make that team the new champions. Right? The Olympians at the time hadn't lost the championships in 10 years, right? So they was 10-year champions, right? And I joined as they were called back then, the PA Knights. Right. And in 2004, as I stated, when I got back from Germany, we became, the PA Knights ended the London Olympians' 10-year reign and became the new national champions.
Wow, so just to pause you there, PA Knights, is that current Farnham?
It's the team that is now known as Farnham Knights.
Or the Rushmore Knights, should we say? Okay.
But at the time, they were, I think, due to sponsorship or whatever, they were called the PA Knights, Pearl Assurance Knights.
So the PA Knights were the first to topple the Olympians, 10-year winning dynasty?
Yes, they were. 2004, they ended that.
And interesting job there.
What I like to say is, it might sound a little bit like I'm boasting, which it is a boast, right? But I think it's because there's lots of players that could say, well, in my career, I won this many championships, right? I think that the thing that stands out for me and why I like to highlight it as an accolade is because I then went on to, after the PA night, I did the same thing with another team, the Coventry Dreads. In 2007, we won the national championships with them. So that was 3 teams. And what stands out the most about that for me is that of all those teams, once I left the programs, those teams weren't able to continue winning championships any longer, barring the London Olympians, who won it one more time, and that was because I left the PA Knights to go to the Coventry Jets, and then the Olympians won the championship again. But then they never won it again. The Knights never won it again, and in 2007, when I won with Coventry Jets and I retired, that was my last year of play. I said, that's it. This is the 3rd team I've taken to the national championship. That's it, I'm done. And the Coventry Jets have never been able to have the same success again. That's my accolade, and I'm quite proud.
Wow. So what are we saying, Coach? None of these teams could exist without you, no?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But what I definitely am saying is that I brought something to those teams, to their programs. Whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to say it is that I brought to them. And unfortunately, once I had moved on, they weren't able to continue that. And I think that's a fact. It had something to do with me being there, because I was there. We got them somewhere. Once I left, that unfortunately they weren't able to continue those successes.
Bro, that's real insightful, Coach, man. Like, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, for me, it's like I only got into the game about 2011. There's a big blip in history for me in the whole 2000s. So just hearing you say that and filling some of them gaps, it's amazing, man. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. So you said you played professionally in Germany, and then you were even part of the NFL Europe program. Can you please tell me, what was it like, you know, being amongst all these professionals and, you know, playing in a professional team?
This is a commonly asked question. The first thing I have to do is kind of get guys to understand the difference between a professional athlete and a semi-pro athlete. So the first thing I would say, playing in Europe, you know, in the GFL, whatever, I'd say that's classed as a semi-pro, right? And and being part of, you know, fortunately, like I said, I was part of the NFL Europe program. The difference, and I'll go into what the difference is, but I feel between the two. As a semi-pro athlete, you kind of control your regime, you control your programs,
right?
You know, how much you train. Now, obviously, you've got set days where you're with the team or whatever, but your gym sessions, your when you watch film, your routine is pretty much left up to you, and you kind of set it for yourself. I mean, you might do that in conjunction with the other import players or whatever not, but you kind of control that. As a professional athlete, it is different, right? The team sets what time you meet, how often you should meet, how long you should meet for, and it becomes very much like a job, right? You know, you can't get up one day and say, "Oh, I thought I'd have a line today." Hell no, right? You've got to be there, right? If you miss, you know, if a coach tells you, "I need you to go see a trainer," right? I need you to go to trainer, get seen, and get a report back to me to let me know what happened with that particular injury or whatever, right? If you don't see that trainer, it will get fed back to that coach, and that coach will feed it back to the head coach. Everything is recorded, everything is documented, and it's much more. You are you are a more smaller cog in a part of a big machine. Right? You're just a cog in part of a big machine. And I think sometimes people I see a lot of people saying, "I'm a professional athlete." Being, you know, it's a great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not a great thing. Playing in Europe and being around these other is an insight into what it will be like to be a professional athlete. Right? It's an insight, and you can put as much effort or as little, right? But it's kind of down to you. You set your own agenda. You set your own regime, as it were, and that's the main difference. But going back to your original question, right? For me, NFL Europe, I would say two things, right? Firstly, it set me off on the road to being, I'd say, an elite player. The reason why I say that is because, right, the thing I remember when I look back and we was watching film, right? So, you know, you probably might not know, I managed to, there's stages, you get selected from the UK, right? If you're, you know, as like a trials, a combine, you would then go on to the European combine. Right. You'd have to then get selected from there to then go and go off to, at the time it was Tampa Bay. Wow. And then they'd bring in the Americans, and this would be the guys, mainly guys that were rookies or guys still trying to get onto NFL programs.
So this was like a proper legit like process, you know, like pathway, like to.
Yes, it was similar to even before, right? Before we went out to Germany or to Tampa, right? We were given, you know, and a shout out to Tony Allen, because he was the man in charge of player development. We were given a trainer. Right? We had to meet that trainer. They oversaw everything from our sleep patterns to our diets to our training. And I can honestly say at that time, which would have been late 90s, early noughties, I was the best athlete throughout my whole career. I was at the peak of mine, because you just couldn't help but, you know, I was sleeping right, eating right, you know, that was how a pro athlete looks after themselves, you know, and unfortunately I ended up getting myself injured and got cut from the team, you know, but I look back on that whole experience with real fond memories, you know.
Well, coach, that's, you know, I mean, not a lot of people can say that, you know, they're involved in anything like that or at NFL level. So to see that you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, that's interesting, man. So obviously you probably have a lot of these, but like throughout your whole career, like what's your favourite football memory, man?
Oh, favourite football memory. Obviously, yeah, I've got a lot of favourite football memories. I'd say the two that jump out to me the most would be in 1997, I got my first Great Britain call-up to be part of the Great Britain team. I was still a young player. This is before NFL Europe and going out to Germany. It was in Bolzano, Italy.
Wow, okay.
And the spectacle and how we were treated was just amazing. So just to give you just an insight on I think it was either the lead up to the games or the first game, because it was like, I think back then we was in the top level. So all of the different teams that was taking part, right? We all was paraded through the streets. You know, and we came like every street, there was a team walking down every street on a line, and we met up at a square, and all the teams was lined up facing each other. This whole spectacle, it was just amazing, right? So that is you know, one of my memories. But I think the proudest memory I have was my second year in GFL, playing for Stuttgart Scorpions.
Yep.
And we had a big game, home game. I actually flew my partner at the time over. Yep. Right. You know, she got put into the VIP box with all what we would call the wags, wives and girlfriends. You know, there was fireworks, and you know, you know, we had tens of thousands of fans or whatever.
Yo, GFL, what's going on? Yeah. We don't get this.
After the game, you know, I was there. Like, you know, you go around the outside, you're signing autographs. And she came down from the VIP box and leaned over and shouted out, "I get it now, I get it." and that made me, you know, because you as a player yourself know the amount of sacrifice that we go through, you know, as players and coaches, the amount of time, the amount of effort, you know, blood, sweat and tears is kind of a figure of speech, but for some of us it's actual blood, sweat and tears, and to finally have someone see it, you know, and say, "Oh, I get it now, you know, this is why you're away so much. This is why you put that time in like you do," you know. It was for me, it was a real proud moment, yeah.
That's it, coach, man. Obviously, you've coached me, and like, I'm pretty sure loads of players can testify to this. Like, you're probably one of the most passionate coaches like I've seen, in it. Like, no cap, I've been at a practice session, coach is trying to show a DB how he wants them to tackle. What does this guy does? He runs up to this guy and tackles him. No pads, nothing. Like, when I saw that, I knew like this guy had passion in it, and that's just my little testament. But since we got you here, just tell us, like, why are you so emotional? Why are you willing to put your body on the line like that? Like,
wow.
South and of the north and of this country. Understood?
Yes, coach.
All right. So I want to say together on three. One, together on three, and then we're going to stay here and let the other coaches talk. Together on three. 1, 2, 3. Together!
I'm, I guess, like an in-betweener. I'm not that far. I'm a young coach. You know, I was a very young head coach. I'm not that far removed, you know, from you guys. I remember the days as a player, right? Just like it was yesterday, right? So I know the struggles you guys have as players, right? But now being a coach and being a head coach, I understand, and I try to walk the tightrope between the two, right? Which can be a difficult process sometimes. I think the main thing that I try to get over to players, right, is to get them to understand there's levels to their game.
For sure, yeah.
Now, you can go out and give your all, right, and say, I can't do anymore. Trust me, you can always do more. And it comes from a place that people might not have ever been to, might not have before, because of life experiences or whatever, you might not have ever had to dig deep. It's a figure of speech, right? But that figure of speech comes from somewhere. It's, you know, you can find more, right? And till players learn how to dig deep and pull that little bit extra more, right, from themselves, I get them to feed off my energy, right? I mean, I'm not a player anymore, but I know what it was like having to dig that, you know, when you're tired, you know, when the coach needs one more play, or you know that people are looking to you, right? Need you to step up and make that play, right? And until whilst guys are figuring out themselves and learning who they are as football players, I know that they can look at me, and if they look at me, right, and I say, look, you know, feed off me, feed off my energy is I don't know, mystical thing, if you will, right? But in the game of American football, we all know that drives or football is kind of consistency, right? And sometimes momentum, that's the word I'm looking for. Momentum is what can take you to the next level. When momentum is going, you know, you can end up doing anything. And energy is something that helps propel you, right? If you get that energy flow, you know, you can. Here's an example. You could be in a family setting or a party, right? There's no energy there, right? Everything's flat, right? Then that will start to filter onto you, and you will be flat. You won't be enjoying it as much as you could. Well, if there's an energy going, there's laughs and there's banter and everybody, then that will start to filter onto you, even if you're not the type of person that normally is the life and soul of the party. So what I like to do is become the life and soul, so everybody can look and see, right? Well, if he can do that, right, then maybe I can, right? And I said, you know, until guys learn to find that energy and feed it from themselves and have their teammates feed off each other, say, feed off me, right? And so I just think having a high energy level helps raise the bar for everyone. You know?
So off that raising the bar, like you've played top level, been across the way. What do you think we can do right now? I mean, what do you think of the level of Britball, and like, what do you think we can do to raise it?
I think there's some good football players, right, in this league. Let's just say BAFA, right, in the league in Britain. There's two things being played in the league. You have athletes and football players. The closer you bring those football players and athletes together, the better the league becomes. Because we tend to have, you know, guys that are, you know, athletic, they're learning the game, right? They don't know football yet, but they're learning how to play football. But they're the athletes. They're the guys that will be able to go on and play football, right? Or you have guys that they know football, but they haven't done enough outside of football to be able to really excel with the knowledge that they've got. So, and until we get those two to mesh together far more, the league is always going to be, you know, trailing behind other leagues, you know, unfortunately.
Got you. So you reckon we got to get the athletes and the guys who just played this on a Sunday closer together on the same playing field, basically?
We do, you know, and I think, and it saddens me sometimes to see that, you know, like I said, I would say that we're currently in the fourth generation of American football in Britain, right? In Europe, what some of you younger guys have to understand that Great Britain was the #1 place to play American football in the 80s, moving to the 90s. Yeah. See how everyone wants to go off to Germany and whatever. Everybody wanted to come to Great Britain. You know, we had imports. We had guys coming over from other countries, you know, to want to see what the game. Even people coming to watch the game. Wow. You know, and what people need to understand, everything that's happening over in Europe, and Germany, and Austria, whatever, we can have that here, right? But things need to be changed. You know, the league needs to be looked at. You know, we need to think about what and whys, you know, what are some of the other places doing that we're not doing? Why does it seem to be successful there, but not so successful here? Right. You know, and I think changes need to be made. I think it's time to start looking and making those changes. I would really like Britain to get back to where they once were as a football league and as a national team.
On the topic of change, like you were obviously like a big cornerstone at the Olympians, and you recently made a change to coach at the Kent Exiles. Can you give us any insight into why you made that decision?
Okay, you know, this is a big one for me, and I know it's a big one for a lot of people. And I've heard lots of the comments. I know I'm someone that always listens. The first thing I would want to say to that is I know there were some people that was disappointed in either the fact that I did it by stepping down or how I did it. So the first thing, let me just address that. Everything that I've done throughout my coaching career, right, I think I've done for the players. As a players coach, I think I've done it for the players, even if they might not always understand why, you know. And being the head coach at the London Olympians, right, it was like, that was my baby, right? And as an example, you send eventually, you know, your children, you know, outgrow the home, they want to leave the home, flee the nest, go to university, whatever, and you get to a point where you have to, you know, be it you feel that they're ready or not, you have to kind of just let them go, right? But that's never an easy thing, right? And the first thing I would need people to understand is that was not an easy thing for me to do, yeah? So because, and I say it again, that team, I felt like it was my baby, right? But at the same time, I felt something needed to change. It couldn't continue the way it was. I wasn't always happy, you know. I mean, that's kind of a trivial statement because sometimes none of us are, right? But I felt if I continued coaches to players, everybody's had to step up, you know, right? The thing I would say to that is, and I don't mean to be cruel or harsh, but what I would say is, well, where was you when I needed the help, right? If people had stepped up, right, I wouldn't have needed to step down, right? I wouldn't have needed to be doing so much. We all need support, you know? And even when you see people and you think, oh, that person's in control, that doesn't mean that you can't say, let me give you a hand, right? And I think, even though I look back on those times with real fond memories, but I still think, you know, me stepping away was probably for the best for the team, right? And, you know, I was sorry to disappoint those guys, and I'd had grown real fond bonds with a lot of the guys, and I still talk to them and say, you know, you'll be my guy, right? But at the same time, I felt for the team to improve, things needed to change, and it meant that me stepping away, if it meant that me stepping away, those changes would come into force, then I thought it was the best thing for me to do, and that's why I ended up doing it.
So, like, from what I know, what I've heard, the Warriors, prior to like being who they were now, were part of the London Olympians. Could you shed any light on that into like what happened in terms of, you know, why the teams split or why there was a divide, if there was any? And
well, I think what you mean there is, and you probably would find that, let me just give you some insight. The London Olympians back in the day were the team, not just of the UK, the team of Europe. Yeah.
Hey, we are the Euro Bowl champs.
Well, there's a happy man, Leonard Valentine. Richard Dunkley, despite Valentine's heroics, it was Richard Dunkley that was named MVP. But as anybody who's ever played the game will tell you, it's a team effort and no one man can stand out, and those players know that it's as a team that they have won the 1993 Euro Bowl. Jerry Anderson strutting his stuff there, and all these Olympians really have performed magnificently. They came in as underdogs, but Richard Dunkley's got his hands on that Euro Bowl trophy.
Yeah, they were the team. You could still go to different countries around Europe and teams would know that name, right? Just because they're steeped in history.
Amen,
right?
amen.
So, you'll find, if you look around the league, a lot of the players, right, or the players have come through the London Olympians, right, and moved on to other teams, and more specifically coaches. So the head coach of the London Blitz, former Olympians player.
Right.
Now me being now at Kent Exiles, former London Olympians player and coach, right? The names go on, Cambridge Cats, obviously Tony Allen, who's the head coach of the London Warriors, former London Olympians head coach, or coach. So, things were filtered because they were the number one team at the time. Things filtered through that team. So everybody, or lots of teams, have got connections to the Olympians because they at some point played for them, or at some point coached with them, or just was around, the players, and played with and against the Olympians back in the day, So because of the history of the London Olympians, you'll find that lots of teams have connections to the London Olympians.
So, obviously, I wouldn't say old is a subjective word, but
careful.
Athletes of old versus athletes of new.
Yeah.
Like, who's winning? Like, who's really doing things the way they need to be done? Like, are there any differences between them and how things used to be done and how they're being done now? And does it show?
When I look back to, remember, I started watching British American football in the 80s, right? I had a poster on my wall, right, of Victor Mohammed, right? So you got to understand the kind of how some of these players were looked at back in the day, right? The main difference I see between today's player and, say, the first generation of player, the word I would use to describe it is men. The most biggest difference between then and now is grown-ass men, right? So I'd say when football first came to these shores, lots of men that were in their peak of athleticism, peak of strength, peak of physical ability went straight into the sport, right? I think now when I look at players, I see guys that are still growing, guys that are still finding themselves in the gym, guys that are still, still becoming a man, right? Whereas back then, I'd say the average age was, late 20s to mid 30s. And one thing that I got to stress is that a lot of people, they hear about, the guys were tougher back then. Don't for a minute think that they couldn't play the game, right? Because, because these guys were athletes as well, right? Yeah, they were rough and tough, right? A good example is like, we've all seen a guy in the gym throwing weights around, hella strong, athletic. And you say, wow, imagine if he came down to football, he'd be killing people, right? Well, those guys all were playing football back then, right? And that is, I think, one of the main differences. It's not just a gym thing, right? It's not just how grown up, I think also people were playing football for different reasons than they are now, right? It wasn't just about where you're standing within the league, whether you're gonna get to the playoffs. It meant a little bit more, right? Games like when London used to go up to play Birmingham, right? That meant something. The guys from the Birmingham Bulls, right, as the number one team up north at the time, right? Do you think they wanted guys from London coming up there and beating them? No way, right? It meant something, right? It was more than just football to a lot of people. Whereas now I think it's more about, it's a game, as it should be. It's a game where we don't want people getting hurt. And, unfortunately, you did get examples of that back in the day. I won't go into that now, right? But, it was more than just football a lot of the times with those older generation guys, right? And I think sometimes a little bit of that is lacking in today's player, right? I would like it if guys took it a little bit more personal. I think I was a kind of a second generation player, and when I played the game, I took my opponent personally, right? It was about, when we played, it was about either dominating him or embarrassing him, right? And it wasn't frowned upon, right, to do that. That is why you were taking the field. That is why you did everything you did leading up to the game, right? So that you went out, and if that guy wasn't doing the same things, he would get embarrassed, right? And nobody wanted to be embarrassed, right? Nobody wanted to get dominated. So a lot of the times it was a dogfight. On the field, it was a dogfight.
Yo, man, that's crazy, man. That's crazy, coach. Man, I wish we could generally keep going, but I think we're gonna have to invite you back for the feature-length podcast, where we get you back in the studio and we can talk more football. But coach, thank you so much for coming down today. Much appreciated. Thanks for giving us the inside of football back then, and we hope to catch up with you soon. Exsandos out.
Peace.